May 31, 1916. The North Sea is about as friendly as a frozen wolverine. In the middle of this grey wasteland, the largest naval battle in history is tearing itself apart. British shells are punching through SMS Derfflinger like she's made of tinfoil. 17 heavy hits. That's 17 one-ton chunks of steel and explosive moving at twice the speed of sound, all finding their mark on one very unlucky German battlecruiser. Her forward turrets are burning wrecks. Water is pouring through holes you could drive a truck through. 157 of her crew are dead or dying. Any reasonable warship would politely roll over and sink. But Derfflinger? She keeps her engines turning. She limps home like a wounded bull elephant. The British sailors watching this impossible survival give her a name that'll stick forever: Iron Dog. But here's where the story gets interesting. This unsinkable legend nearly died before she ever fired a shot. Chapter 1. The Iron Dog's Paradox. May 31, 1916. The North Sea is about as friendly as a frozen wolverine. In the middle of this grey wasteland, the largest naval battle in history is tearing itself apart. British shells are punching through SMS Derfflinger like she's made of tinfoil. 17 heavy hits. That's 17 one-ton chunks of steel and explosive moving at twice the speed of sound, all finding their mark on one very unlucky German battlecruiser. Her forward turrets are burning wrecks. Water is pouring through holes you could drive a truck through. 157 of her crew are dead or dying. Any reasonable warship would politely roll over and sink. But Derfflinger? She keeps her engines turning. She limps home like a wounded bull elephant. The British sailors watching this impossible survival give her a name that'll stick forever: Iron Dog. But here's where the story gets interesting. This unsinkable legend nearly died before she ever fired a shot. Back up 4 years. March 30, 1912. Hamburg's Blohm and Voss shipyard. Picture a bunch of German engineers in bowler hats standing around arguing. They're debating how to build the perfect warship. They're facing a problem that's been plaguing German battlecruisers since day one: wing turrets. These genius designers had been sticking gun turrets on the sides of ships like afterthoughts. Surprise, they didn't work very well. So for construction number 213, they decided to get revolutionary. Super-firing centerline turrets, all guns pointing forward or backward. None of this sideways nonsense. At 56 million gold marks, she was going to be Germany's answer to British naval supremacy. They named her after Georg von Derfflinger, some field marshal from the 30 Years' War who apparently knew how to win fights. Fast forward to June 14, 1913. Launch day. The who's who of Imperial Germany are dressed in their finest uniforms. They've gathered to watch their newest superweapon slide majestically into the water. General von Mackensen steps up to deliver his ceremonial speech. The crowd holds its breath. The wooden sledges crack under Derfflinger's massive weight. She lurches forward exactly 30 centimeters and stops dead. 30 centimeters. That's about 1 foot. Germany's newest battlecruiser is stuck like a beached whale. This is happening in front of everyone who matters in the German Empire. The problem? Some brilliant cost-cutting genius decided to use 3 wooden sledges instead of 4. The middle one bore too much weight. It squeezed out all the lubrication. It turned into the world's most expensive doorstop. There's your mighty warship, sitting there like a disappointed tourist. Meanwhile, dignitaries shuffle their feet and pretend this was all part of the plan. 1 month later, after much swearing and engineering, they removed the jammed sledge entirely. Time for take 2. July 12, 1913. This time, Derfflinger actually moves. She slides into Hamburg's waters with considerably less ceremony. Also considerably more relief. Workers sail her incomplete hull around Denmark to Kiel. They're racing to get her battle ready. But time is running short. Across Europe, tensions are building like pressure in a boiler. Archduke Franz Ferdinand is about to take a very unfortunate drive through Sarajevo. The powder keg that is European politics is one spark away from exploding. When it does, this untested battlecruiser will be thrown straight into the fire. War erupted on August 1, 1914. Derfflinger had barely finished her trials. No peacetime shakedown cruises. No leisurely training exercises. Just congratulations. You're commissioned. Now go fight the Royal Navy. She joined Admiral Hipper's eye scouting group. Her sisters were Seydlitz, Moltke, and von der Tann. 4 German battlecruisers against the most powerful navy in the world. What could possibly go wrong? Chapter 2. Baptism by Fire. December 16, 1914. Dawn is breaking over the North Sea like a bad mood. Out of the fog come 5 German battlecruisers looking like iron ghosts. Admiral Franz von Hipper has a plan that's either brilliant or completely insane. Probably both. He's going to sail right up to the English coast. Then he's going to knock on their front door with 12-inch shells. Derfflinger and von der Tann peel off toward the seaside town of Scarborough. Nice place. Victorian hotels, a medieval castle on a hill, families taking their winter holidays by the sea. At 8 in the morning, these families get a very rude awakening. German battlecruisers start lobbing shells the size of telephone poles into their town. 500 shells in 30 minutes. The Grand Hotel catches fire. Scarborough Castle, which has been minding its own business since the 12th century, suddenly finds itself back in the war business. 17 civilians die. The British propaganda machine goes absolutely ballistic. Remember Scarborough? They scream. The Hun murders innocent women and children. Here's the thing though, those shells weren't random. German gunners were aiming for the radio stations and coastal defense installations. Scarborough wasn't just a pretty seaside resort, it was a legitimate military target with communication infrastructure. But try explaining that to a grieving mother. Try explaining it to British newspaper editors who smell blood in the water. While Derfflinger and von der Tann are redecorating Scarborough, things get interesting elsewhere. Seydlitz, Blucher, and Moltke are giving Hartlepool the same treatment. The coastal batteries there actually fight back. They score a hit on Blucher. It's like David versus Goliath, except David has a slingshot. Goliath has brought his entire family. The raid is a tactical success but a propaganda disaster. Those Remember Scarborough posters end up recruiting thousands of British soldiers. Sometimes winning the battle means losing the war. This is one of those times. But there's a bigger problem lurking in the background. While German shells are falling on English seaside towns, something sinister is happening. British codebreakers are sitting in a locked room beneath Whitehall. They're reading German wireless messages like morning newspapers. Room 40, they call it. A bunch of academics and chess players who've turned warfare into a math problem. They know Hitler is coming before he even leaves port. January 24, 1915. Doggerbank, a shallow patch of North Sea that fishing boats usually fight over. Today, it's about to host a very different kind of fight. British Admiral David Beatty has 6 battlecruisers waiting in ambush. This courtesy of those helpful German radio messages his codebreakers keep intercepting. Hitler's squadron sails straight into the trap. Seydlitz, Moltke, Derfflinger, and the armored cruiser Blucher, plus escorts. When the British ships appear on the horizon, it's like that moment in a horror movie. You realize the call is coming from inside the house. The German ships turn and run for home. What follows is a stern chase across 100 miles of grey water. British shells are getting closer by the minute. Here's where Derfflinger discovers she has a problem. Her main guns can only elevate to 13.5 degrees. British guns? 15 degrees, sometimes more. In naval gunnery, elevation equals range. Range equals life. The British ships open fire first. Their shells splash around German hulls while German guns can't even reply. It's like bringing a knife to a gunfight, except the knife costs 56 million gold marks and carries over 1,000 men. Poor old Blucher becomes the victim. She's the slowest ship in the German line. She becomes a floating target. British shells tear her apart piece by piece. She capsizes with most of her crew still aboard. Over 700 men lost because she couldn't keep up. She couldn't shoot back effectively. The rest of Hitler's squadron escapes, but barely. Only because Lieutenant Commander Ralph Seymour does something spectacular. He sends confusing signals that let the Germans slip away. This is the same Seymour who'll bungle signals at Jutland. Some people just have a gift. Back in Kiel, German engineers swarm over Derfflinger's gun turrets like angry ants. The lesson from Doggerbank is crystal clear. German guns need to reach further, or German ships will keep dying. They're dying just outside their own range. The engineers modify the turrets to elevate to 16 degrees. This extends her reach to over 20,000 meters. It's a race against time and British engineering. Those codebreakers in room 40 aren't done reading German mail. They're planning something much bigger than a North Sea ambush. Admiral John Jellicoe is assembling the most powerful battle fleet in naval history. He knows exactly where the Germans are going to be. The trap at Doggerbank was just the warm-up act. The real show is still coming. Chapter 3. The Jutland Trap. May 31, 1916. In a basement room beneath Whitehall, British codebreakers are having the best day of their war. The intercepts are crystal clear. Admiral Reinhard Scheer's entire high seas fleet is putting to sea. 16 battleships, 5 battlecruisers, 11 cruisers, and 61 destroyers. It's like Christmas morning for room 40. Admiral John Jellicoe gets the word. He starts moving his pieces across the North Sea chessboard. The Grand Fleet steams south from Scapa Flow. 24 battleships and 3 battlecruisers. Admiral David Beatty takes his 6 battlecruisers and 4 super dreadnought battleships south from Rosyth. 250 warships are about to converge. They're heading for a patch of grey water 60 miles off the Danish coast. The British plan is beautiful in its simplicity. Beatty's fast ships will find the Germans first. They'll play the role of the tethered goat. When the German fleet takes the bait and chases him north, they'll run straight into Jellicoe's battle line. 24 British battleships in perfect formation, crossing the T of the German fleet. It's the naval equivalent of an execution by firing squad. What could possibly go wrong? 4:26 in the afternoon. HMS Lyons lookout spots smoke on the southeastern horizon. Enemy in sight, signals flash between British ships. Beatty's battlecruisers turn toward what his intelligence tells him should be German light forces, forces running away from overwhelming British firepower. Those smoke plumes belong to Admiral Franz von Hipper's I Scouting Group, 5 German battlecruisers, including Derfflinger. They're steaming northeast like they own the ocean. Behind them, invisible below the horizon, comes the entire high seas fleet. The hunters have become the hunted. Nobody's figured that out yet. At 4:48, the opposing battlecruiser lines spot each other. The distance, 26,000 yards of choppy gray water. 26,000 yards. That's almost 15 miles. These ships are going to try to kill each other from distances where you can barely see the target with a telescope. Beatty has 6 battlecruisers: Lion, Princess Royal, Queen Mary, Tiger, New Zealand, and Indefatigable, plus 4 super dreadnoughts bringing up the rear. Hipper has 5: Lutzow, Derfflinger, Seydlitz, Moltke, and von der Tann. On paper, it's a fair fight. In reality, fair fights are for suckers. They're for people who don't understand the first rule of warfare: cheat early, cheat often, and bring more guns than the other guy. The sea conditions are perfect for a disaster. Visibility keeps shifting from crystal clear to 0 in seconds. Cordite smoke drifts across the water. Ships appear and disappear like ghosts. Range finding becomes a nightmare when you can't see your target half the time. Both battle lines turn southeast. They're steaming parallel courses like 2 trains racing toward a cliff. The range closes to 20,000 yards, then 18,000. Gun crews on both sides load their massive shells. They wait for the order that will turn this chess match into a slaughter. In Derfflinger's forward turret, Corvette Kapitän Georg Hayes peers through his rangefinder. It's a huge improvement over earlier German ships, 7.5 meters instead of 3. He's tracking HMS Queen Mary, 3rd ship in the British line. Queen Mary is a beautiful ship, sleek and fast. She has 8 13.5-inch guns that can put holes in battleship armor. She's also a floating ammunition dump with inadequate armor protection. She's sailing toward the most accurate naval gunners in the world. But nobody's figured that out yet either. The British ships have a slight speed advantage. They can make 26 knots to the Germans' 25. But speed won't matter much when the shooting starts. What matters is who hits first, who hits hardest, whose magazines don't explode when enemy shells find their mark. As the range drops below 20,000 yards, both battle lines are close enough for clear targeting. Gunners can see their targets clearly through the haze. These aren't the wooden walls of Nelson's era. These are steel fortresses mounting guns that can hurl 1-ton shells. Each shell moves at nearly the speed of sound. Each ship carries enough explosive power to level a city block. The North Sea is about to witness industrial warfare at its most lethal. In a few minutes, British naval supremacy is going to get a reality check. That check will echo through naval history. Chapter 4. The Executioner's Work. 4:48 p.m., May 31, 1916. HMS Lyon's guns roar first. Orange flames stab across the gray water like dragon's breath. The opening salvo of the largest naval battle in history lands short. It throws up towering columns of water around the German line. Seconds later, Lutzow's guns answer back. The range is 18,000 yards, about 10 miles. Both sides are firing shells that weigh as much as small automobiles. This is what happens when the industrial age goes to war with itself. In Derfflinger's fire control position, Corvette Kapitän Hayes adjusts his range estimates. HMS Queen Mary shimmers in and out of the cordite haze. Queen Mary is a beautiful ship. Sleek lines, 8 13.5-inch guns, capable of 28 knots. She's also about to become a textbook example. British battlecruiser design philosophy was fatally flawed. The British had built their battlecruisers on a simple principle: speed and firepower matter more than armor. Why waste weight on protection when you can outrun anything that can hurt you? You can outgun anything that can catch you. It's elegant theory. It's also complete nonsense when you're standing and fighting at point-blank range. In naval terms, that means anything under 20,000 yards. 4:55 p.m. Derfflinger's first salvo straddles Queen Mary. Shells land both short and over. The next salvo walks closer. Hayes can see the splashes marching toward their target like deadly footsteps. Queen Mary's return fire is falling around Derfflinger's hull. But German armor is designed to take punishment. British armor? That's more of a suggestion. 5:04 p.m. Two of Derfflinger's 12-inch shells slam into Queen Mary's forward section. The first penetrates her upper armor and explodes inside the ship. The second hits near the forward barbette. That's the armored tube that feeds ammunition from the magazines to the turrets. What happens next takes about 3 seconds. It defies every assumption British naval architects have made about battlecruiser survival. The explosion races down the ammunition hoist into Queen Mary's forward magazine. 13.5 tons of cordite detonate simultaneously. That's enough explosive to demolish several city blocks. The entire forward section of the ship simply vanishes. Gone. Not damaged, not on fire. Gone. The stern section, suddenly unsupported, lifts into the air like a pointing finger. Then it breaks in half again. Another magazine explosion destroys the after part of the ship. In less than 90 seconds, HMS Queen Mary has ceased to exist. 1,266 men die instantly. Only 20 survivors bob in the oily water where a 13,000-ton battlecruiser used to be. On HMS Lyons Bridge, Admiral Beatty watches his fleet disintegrate. 10 minutes ago, he had 6 battlecruisers. Now he has 4. German shells are still falling like steel rain. There seems to be something wrong with our bloody ships today, he tells his flag captain. It's the understatement of the century. But Beatty doesn't know the worst part yet. Indefatigable took hits from von der Tann and exploded just like Queen Mary. Another 1,000 men dead in seconds. 2 British battlecruisers have simply vanished. The German ships absorb hit after hit and keep fighting. Something is very wrong with British ships today. It's not what Beatty thinks. The problem isn't German gunnery, though that's excellent. The problem is British magazine safety procedures. Or rather, the complete lack thereof. British gun crews have been trained to maximize rate of fire. They store ready-use ammunition outside the armored magazines. Cordite charges sit in the turrets, in the barbettes, anywhere they can be grabbed quickly. German crews learned different lessons after Seydlitz nearly exploded at Dogger Bank. They improved their anti-flash systems. They tightened magazine discipline. They accepted slightly slower rates of fire in exchange for not becoming underwater craters. British crews kept the old procedures and paid with their lives. 6:30 p.m. The battle has been raging for over an hour. Admiral Horace Hood's 3rd Battlecruiser Squadron appears from the northeast. 3 more British battlecruisers, Invincible, Inflexible, and Indomitable. Finally, reinforcements. Hood signals his ships to engage the rear of the German line. HMS Invincible is Hood's flagship. She's the name ship of her class. She was one of the original battlecruisers, launched in 1908. The concept was still new and promising then. Invincible has fought in the Falklands. She sank German armored cruisers Scharnhorst and Gneisenau. She's a veteran, and her crew knows their business. None of that matters when Lutzow and Derfflinger spot her at 9,000 yards, point-blank range for 12-inch guns. Both German ships fire 3 salvos in rapid succession. The range is so close they can hardly miss. Invincible's turret crews are loading and firing as fast as they can. But speed doesn't matter. Your target has already launched the shells that will kill you. At 6:34 p.m., at least one 12-inch shell from the 3rd German salvo strikes Invincible's midships Q turret. The shell penetrates the turret front. It blows off the roof. It detonates inside the gunhouse. The explosion races down into the magazine spaces below. What happens to Invincible makes Queen Mary's death look gentle by comparison. The midships magazines detonate with such violence that the explosion cuts the ship completely in half. Both ends of Invincible lift into the air at sharp angles. Her broken back sags toward the seabed. For a few surreal seconds, she looks like a giant steel V standing on the water. Then both halves slide beneath the waves. Rear Admiral Hood and 1,020 of his officers and men die instantly. Only 6 survivors are pulled from the water by destroyer HMS Badger. 6 men out of over 1,000. The survivors were stationed in the forward control position on the tripod mast, about as far from the exploding magazines as you could get and still be on the same ship. In 20 minutes of fighting, German battlecruisers have destroyed 3 British battlecruisers. They've killed over 3,000 men. Derfflinger alone has sunk 2 capital ships. The Royal Navy's technological advantage has been revealed as a deadly illusion. The thing that's supposed to rule the waves is a floating bomb. But the real test is still coming. Those German battlecruisers have just led the entire British Grand Fleet straight to Admiral Scheer's High Seas Fleet. Now it's time to find out who really controls the North Sea. Chapter 5. The Death Ride. 7 p.m., May 31, 1916. Admiral Reinhard Scheer is having the worst moment of his naval career. His High Seas Fleet has been chasing Admiral Beatty's battered battlecruisers north for over 2 hours. Now he's about to discover why that was a spectacularly bad idea. Out of the haze ahead comes the entire British Grand Fleet. It appears like something from a sailor's nightmare. 24 battleships in perfect line-ahead formation. They stretch across the horizon like an iron wall. HMS Iron Duke, King George V, Orion, Monarch, Conqueror. Every name is a promise of violence. Behind their 15-inch guns stand the best-trained naval gunners in the world. They've been waiting for this moment since the war began. Scheer has stumbled into the classic naval trap. Crossing the T, his ships are approaching the British line and on. This means only his leading ships can fire. Every British battleship can bring all their guns to bear. It's the nautical equivalent of walking single file into a firing squad. The German admiral does the only thing he can do. He orders Gefechtsquertwend, battle turn away. It's a maneuver that requires every ship in the line to turn around simultaneously. They need to head for home at maximum speed. In theory, it should get his fleet out of trouble. In practice, it's about to get a lot of German sailors killed. Because someone has to buy time for the battle fleet to escape. Someone has to charge directly at 24 British battleships. They need to keep their attention while Scheer's dreadnoughts make their getaway. That someone is Admiral Franz von Hipper's I Scouting Group. The order comes by searchlight signal at 7:12 p.m. Close the enemy and ram if possible. Read that again. Ram if possible. Hipper is being ordered to take 5 battlecruisers and charge the entire Grand Fleet. Lutzow, Derfflinger, Seydlitz, Moltke, and von der Tann. It's the naval equivalent of the charge of the Light Brigade, except these horses are made of steel and carry 1,000 men each. In Derfflinger's conning tower, Captain Hartog receives the order. He probably wonders what he did to deserve this. His ship has been fighting for over 2 hours. She's taken multiple hits. Her crew is exhausted. Now he's supposed to sail directly toward 24 enemy battleships. They outgun him by a factor of about 10 to 1. But orders are orders. This is the Imperial German Navy. The 5 battlecruisers turn toward the British line and work up to maximum speed, 26 knots toward certain death. Smoke pours from their funnels. Battle ensigns snap in the wind. If they're going to die, they'll die like warships. The British Grand Fleet erupts like a volcano range. 24 battleships and 6 battlecruisers firing simultaneously. Over 300 heavy guns speaking at once. The sound is beyond description. Think of the loudest thunder you've ever heard. Then multiply it by 100. The sea itself seems to shake. Shells fall around the German ships like steel hail. 12-inch, 13.5-inch, 15-inch projectiles. Each one weighs more than a small car. Each one can punch through a meter of armor plate. The water between the fleets becomes a forest of shell splashes. Some tower higher than a ship's masthead. Lutzow, leading the charge, takes the worst of it. British shells tear through her hull like paper. Her forward turrets are smashed. Water pours through holes you could sail a destroyer through. But she keeps firing back. Her remaining guns send shells toward the British line. She keeps shooting even as she begins her death throes. Derfflinger, second in line, becomes the focus of concentrated British fire. HMS Iron Duke, HMS Royal Oak, HMS Superb all target the German ship. These battleships mount 8 15-inch guns each. They're targeting the ship that sank Queen Mary and Invincible. Their shells bracket her like a deadly cage. 7:15 p.m. A 15-inch shell from HMS Revenge penetrates Derfflinger's forward superstructure. It explodes in her fire control station. The blast kills most of her spotting team and wrecks her main rangefinder. Another shell from HMS Royal Oak smashes into her forward barbette. It jams Caesar turret and kills everyone inside. 7:18 p.m. HMS Iron Duke scores a direct hit on Derfflinger's after superstructure. The explosion destroys her secondary fire control position. It starts fires that spread through the upper works. Smoke pours from her funnels and superstructure. She looks like a floating volcano. But the Iron Dog keeps fighting. Her remaining turrets continue to fire at the British line. Her engines keep turning. Her crew keeps their posts even as shells tear their ship apart around them. This is what separates professionals from amateurs. Professionals keep doing their jobs even when the world is ending. 7:25 p.m. A shell from HMS Colossus hits Derfflinger's armored deck. Probably a 13.5-inch. It penetrates into her engine spaces. The explosion kills 17 men and damages her port turbines. Her speed drops to 20 knots, then 15. She begins to fall behind the other German ships. This is when most ships would signal for help or try to surrender. Derfflinger's crew does neither. They patch the holes. They fight the fires. They keep their guns working. If they're going to die, they'll take some British ships with them. By 7:30 p.m., the German battlecruisers have absorbed punishment that would have sunk any ship from the previous century. Lutzow is barely afloat. Her bow is completely submerged. Seydlitz has taken 21 heavy hits. Derfflinger has been hit 17 times by shells ranging from 6-inch to 15-inch. Somehow, impossibly, they're all still fighting. The charge has bought Scheer the time he needed. The German battle fleet completes its turn and disappears into the haze. They're heading for home. The British Grand Fleet, after delivering the most concentrated naval bombardment in history, watches its targets limp away into the gathering darkness. Admiral Jellicoe later wrote that he could hardly believe what he had witnessed. 5 German ships had charged 24 British battleships. They absorbed devastating punishment and lived to tell about it. The British press, desperate for good news, started calling Derfflinger the Iron Dog, a ship too tough to die. But as darkness fell over the North Sea, both fleets groped through the night toward their home ports. Derfflinger's ordeal was far from over. She had survived the impossible. But the war that created her was about to destroy the empire she served. Chapter 6, The Last Voyage. November 9, 1918. Kaiser Wilhelm II abdicates and flees to Holland like a tourist with bad timing. The German Empire that built Derfflinger officially dies at 11 a.m. It's killed not by enemy shells but by its own people's exhaustion. 4 years of war, 2 million dead. The home front has finally said enough. But in the naval base at Wilhelmshaven, some people haven't gotten the memo. Admiral Reinhard Scheer and his fellow admirals are planning one last voyage. They call it Operation Plan 19. A final death ride against the British Grand Fleet. No government authorization. No strategic objective. Just 500 ships and 80,000 men sailing out to die gloriously rather than surrender ignominiously. The admirals think it's about honor. The sailors think it's murder. October 29, 1918. The order goes out. Prepare for sea. All ships, all crews, maximum ammunition load. The High Seas Fleet is going to sea one more time. Ostensibly for training exercises. Nobody believes that lie. Least of all the men who are supposed to die for it. On SMS Derfflinger, the crew receives the order to weigh anchor. They probably wonder what fresh hell this is. They've survived Jutland, 2 years of blockade, and watching their empire collapse around them. Now their officers want them to commit suicide for the sake of naval tradition. The answer is simple. No. It starts with the stokers, coal trimmers and engine room ratings who've been shoveling fuel into hungry boilers for 4 years. Their families are starving at home. They refuse to light the fires. No steam, no sailing. It's elegant in its simplicity. From Derfflinger, the mutiny spreads to König, Kronprinz Wilhelm, Markgraf. Ship after ship simply refuses to obey orders. The sailors aren't traitors or cowards. They're the same men who charged the Grand Fleet at Jutland. They just won't die for officers' pride in a war that's already lost. Admiral Hipper finds himself facing a revolution. The same man who led the death ride at Jutland now faces his own crews. His men, who followed him into hell and back, are politely but firmly telling him to stuff his final battle. They'll fight the British if the British come to them. They won't sail out to be massacred for no reason. The mutiny spreads beyond the ships. Sailors march through Kiel carrying red flags and singing revolutionary songs. Workers join them. Soldiers lay down their arms. Within days, the rebellion that started with Derfflinger's crew refusing to weigh anchor has spread across Germany. The empire dies from the bottom up. Ordinary people who just want to go home kill it. Kaiser Wilhelm abdicates on November 9th. The armistice is signed on November 11th. The war is over. Somehow, impossibly, Derfflinger has survived it all. Jutland, the British blockade, the collapse of everything she was built to defend. The Iron Dog lives on. But there's one more voyage ahead. November 21, 1918. Under the terms of the armistice, the German High Seas Fleet steams toward internment in Scapa Flow. 74 ships in line ahead formation. They fly white ensigns of surrender. The entire British Grand Fleet escorts them. It's the largest surrender of warships in naval history. Derfflinger steams past HMS Iron Duke in a scene loaded with irony. Jellicoe's flagship at Jutland now watches her sail into captivity. Both ships are relics of an age when battleships ruled the seas. Nobody knows it yet. In the grey waters of Scapa Flow, Derfflinger swings around her anchor and waits. She's surrounded by the same British ships that tried to sink her at Jutland. Her crew is repatriated to Germany. They're replaced by a skeleton maintenance party. The Iron Dog that once ruled the North Sea becomes a museum piece, a tourist attraction for British officers who come to gawk at the ship that wouldn't die. Months pass. The Paris Peace Conference drags on while politicians argue. They're carving up the world. German sailors maintain their ships in British waters. They wait to learn their fate. Will they be scrapped? Divided among the Allies? Nobody knows. The uncertainty eats at everyone. Rear Admiral Ludwig von Reuter knows exactly what will happen. The British will claim the German fleet as war prizes. These ships, built with German steel, German labor, German ingenuity, will sail under foreign flags, or they'll be melted down for scrap. It's unthinkable. June 21, 1919. A Saturday morning in Scapa Flow. Grey and calm like most mornings in the Orkneys. The British fleet is at sea conducting gunnery exercises. Only a few destroyers and patrol boats remain to watch the interned Germans. At 11:20 a.m., Admiral von Reuter signals paragraph 11 to all German ships. It's a pre-arranged code. It means exactly what every German sailor has hoped and feared it would mean: scuttle the fleet. On Derfflinger, Chief Petty Officer Wilhelm Ludecker gives the order his crew has been waiting for: open the seacocks, flood the compartments, lower the boats and abandon ship, but first, hoist the Imperial German ensign one final time. The Iron Dog that survived Jutland's hell lists slowly to port. Water pours into her hull. Her crew stands in their boats, watching their ship die by her own hand. It's better than the alternative. Better than seeing her guns pointing at German shores under foreign command. One by one, the ships of the High Seas Fleet follow Derfflinger to the bottom. Battleships, battlecruisers, cruisers, destroyers. Over 50 warships deliberately sunk by their own crews rather than serve foreign masters. It's the greatest act of naval defiance in history. The British are furious. They arrest von Reuter and his officers. They threaten court-martials. They demand explanations. The Germans just shrug. The war is over, but honor isn't negotiable. If you can't fight, you can at least choose how you die. But death isn't the end of Derfflinger's story. In 1939, 20 years after she sank herself, salvage crews raise her hull. They use compressed air and steel cables. The operation is a marvel of engineering. It's also a comedy of errors. The Iron Dog floats upside down. For 7 years, from 1939 to 1946, SMS Derfflinger sits in Scapa Flow like a steel whale. Her tripod mast points toward the sea floor. Her armored deck is exposed to Scottish weather. She floats next to HMS Iron Duke, Jellicoe's flagship from Jutland. The enemies of 1916 are now neighbors. Both are museum pieces from an age when battleships mattered. In 1946, 27 years after her scuttling, Derfflinger makes her final voyage to the breakers. She spends more time capsized than she ever spent in active service. Her steel, once forged to armor a German battlecruiser, ends up in everything from kitchen appliances to scientific instruments. Some of it may have gone into spacecraft. The atoms that once protected German sailors from British shells now help humanity reach for the stars. The Iron Dog is gone, but her legend survives. The ship that survived the impossible at Jutland. That nearly died before she was born. That was killed by her own crew's honor rather than enemy fire. In the end, maybe that's the most German ending of all. So there you have it, the complete, ridiculous, tragic, and somehow triumphant story of SMS Derfflinger. The battlecruiser that got stuck at her own launch, the ship that survived hell at Jutland, the warship that chose suicide over surrender. Think about the sheer absurdity of it all. This ship nearly died before firing a shot. Some cost-cutting genius decided 3 wooden sledges were better than 4. She spent her first day of existence stuck like a beached whale. This happened in front of the German naval establishment. If that's not a metaphor for the entire German war effort, nothing is. But then she went out and became something extraordinary. At Jutland, Derfflinger absorbed 17 heavy hits from the most powerful battleships in the world. She sailed home under her own power. She sank HMS Queen Mary and Invincible, 2 of the Royal Navy's finest ships. When the British Grand Fleet opened fire on 5 German battlecruisers, rational people expected obliteration. 24 battleships in line of battle should have ended it in minutes. Instead, they all limped home. The British, who were supposed to rule the waves through superior technology and firepower, learned a lesson. Sometimes sheer bloody-minded determination matters more than technical specifications. The Iron Dog earned her nickname the hard way. She refused to die when any sensible warship would have rolled over and sunk. She became proof that engineering excellence and crew training can overcome impossible odds. German naval architects built better ships than their British counterparts. German sailors knew how to use them. But here's the really interesting part. Derfflinger's greatest moment wasn't at Jutland. It was in Scapa Flow, 27 months later. Her crew chose honor over pragmatism. They scuttled their own ship rather than see her serve foreign masters. Think about that decision. The war is over. Your empire is gone. Your economy is in ruins. You could hand over your ships. You could go home to your families. You could try to rebuild something from the wreckage. Instead, you choose to sink 50 million gold marks worth of warships. You won't compromise your principles. It's magnificent and completely insane. That makes it perfectly German. The British called it vandalism. The Germans called it honor. History calls it the greatest act of naval defiance ever recorded. Admiral von Reuter and his crews chose to write their own ending. They wouldn't let the victors write it for them. Maybe there's a lesson in that for all of us. Sometimes you can't win. Sometimes the odds are impossible and the outcome is predetermined. But you can still choose how your story ends. You can still decide what you stand for when everything else falls apart. Derfflinger spent more time sitting upside down in Scapa Flow than she ever spent in active service. Her steel ended up in kitchen appliances and scientific instruments instead of naval museums. But her legacy isn't about the metal. It's about the choices her crew made when those choices mattered most. The age of battleships ended with aircraft carriers and guided missiles. The German Empire ended with revolution and defeat. But the Iron Dog story endures because it's really a story about people. Engineers who built unsinkable ships. Sailors who refused to quit when quitting made sense. Officers who chose principle over survival. In the end, maybe that's all any of us can do. Build something worth building. Fight for something worth fighting for. Choose honor over convenience when the moment comes to choose. SMS Derfflinger, the Iron Dog, the ship that wouldn't die until she decided to die on her own terms. Not a bad epitaph for a battlecruiser. Or for anyone else.